This lesson provides some guidance for purchasing equipment. Thank you for watching. I am Kevin England. The premise of this presentation is to share with you some advice that helps you to navigate the waters for making purchases. We'll talk about some of the tactics for knowing the marketplace and tips on how to shop. And then we'll spend some time reviewing pros and cons regarding buying ready-made kits, buying parts, buying local, buying from a shopping list, and so on. When you open a beekeeping catalog, it's an exciting and overwhelming experience all at once. Of course, you likely have little to no experience about what you're looking at and what's available to buy. The terminology can be confusing. There are often many choices to select from, and you're not sure which ones are right. It's unclear on what the best options are. It's likely, in fact, that quite a few of the pieces will seem foreign. Really, you may not even know if you need them or how to use them. The goal in this lesson is to see if we can help you navigate the waters and be a more informed customer while having confidence in buying. As it is these days, you can buy direct right from a vendor. You could buy for a show, or you could buy through mail order catalogs, a website, on specialty outlet sites like eBay and such. These forms of interactions through the various channels have pros and cons, and we hope that this is going to be a good primer on where the best place is to shop and how to be a savvy shopper. Let's go ahead and get started on this. It's interesting to suggest that the good old-fashioned paper catalog is really the great place to start. Now, there's a couple of factors that are unique about beekeeping that play into this notion. Beekeeping catalogs were the customary way to browse and buy for decades. Most beekeeping supply companies, when they got their start, provided really good catalogs, and when the web came about, simply awful websites. As such, the catalog experience of seeing what equipment was available, the descriptions of it, the pictures, and other were always superior. The truth is, this is still kind of the case today, but supply house websites are getting better and better as years go by. Our recommendation is get yourself a catalog. Go to their website and make the request. They'll mail you one right away. And then you can start your shopping list by browsing through the catalog and getting familiar with the offerings. Of course, we have learned nowadays you can't beat the convenience of shopping via a website. Flip through the paper-based catalog for your selections and then use the company's website to add what you might desire to their shopping cart. This benefits you that you can keep a running collection and understand how much money you're going to spend, and eventually you could click the button and calculate whatever the shopping costs or the shipping costs will be. We said already that catalog is usually a better experience, but there's often one advantage of a website: search. Sometimes the indexes of the catalogs are hard to navigate. With search on a website, you could use your own terminology to try and noodle out what it is you're looking for, and you could figure out where it is on the website and then go back and cross-reference it to the catalog. For this reason, we often shop with a catalog on our lap, and then we have a browser open with a window to a website, or actually a bunch of tabs, to different websites that have various goods, looking around, and we do our homework that way. There is, of course, the option for some of you to use a local vendor. For the most part, though, to be honest, not very practical. Unlike what you're familiar with, say, for a box store for hardware, Lowe's, Home Depot, there are really not a lot of hometowns that have a local beekeeping supply store. In fact, most of the time, if you drive, you're going to end up driving a while to get to one in your region. Most local in-person shopping actually takes place in a different manner. It's at a beekeeping meeting, which, by our experience, has pros and cons, um, depending on what you're trying to source and how the meeting is set up for vendors. That sentiment requires a little bit of unpacking. It is great to be able to shop from a vendor and be in person, but in practice, especially at beekeeping meetings, there are some limitations. Consider it from the vendor's perspective. They have to bring the inventory, pack the truck, send personnel, and sometimes there's competing meetings in a region across various areas, and pragmatically, it's a lot of work for them. They have to load the truck for a single meeting and then reload it at the end of the night for anything that they didn't sell. And then they take it out of the truck and have to bring it back inside the store or warehouse when they're done at the end of the night. Do that on a number of weekends, and you can understand the fatigue of vendors trying to come out and sell at a beekeeping meeting. What we've seen not too recently is a new practice that it's becoming more and more commonplace, and it's not a good thing. They're going to bring a limited amount of products to a meeting, and then they'll hold their catalog, and if they don't have it on hand, they'll open the catalog and they'll talk you through it. Now, surprisingly, this sometimes is not a bad experience because the people who sell this stuff know the equipment. They know it inside and out, and they can give you good advice, and you have the opportunity to interact with someone and ask questions. But at these meetings, there's high demand for the personnel standing behind the counter. And often what they do is point you to the catalog, and they might give you a discount code, and they'll send you to the website to go order it when you get home. The good news is they usually give you a coupon code, and they express to you that if you order a specific amount, it's free shipping, or sometimes they give you free shipping if you mention that you talked to them at the show. Again, your mileage may vary with this. If you do have a full-fledged store near to you, good for you. It should be said that the people who you interact with there are also very knowledgeable and can give you great guidance. Now, sometimes these stores get super busy, especially at beekeeping seasons, and it comes with the territory that it's hard to get attention from that, but usually those are good experiences. Now, there's something to be said about, again, seeing the items you're going to see and purchase, and if you get to a full-fledged store, they generally have a large inventory and multiple choices of some things for you to pick and to be discerning on. For certain goods, especially when it comes to, say, trying on beekeeping jackets and gloves and things that you're going to wear, you really do get a better experience by being able to try it on. We like shopping locally as much as anyone else, but we do it with the discerning eye. It has to be said that some local stores sell locally produced goods, something that someone in the neighborhood is making, or maybe they make it out back, and they may or may not, unfortunately, be up to the quality of the big stores. In the next few slides, we're going to talk about equipment selection. And when you hear what we say about being discerning about what you're buying, know that sometimes local stuff does not meet the test. The other thing to understand about local is occasionally they're dealers for the big stores, and they buy from the big stores and then mark it up. You benefit from the advantage of being able to buy it locally, but you pay a little bit more for it. These are all just dynamics to consider while you're thinking about and figuring out where to make your purchases. That last statement could be construed by some to say don't buy local. To be sure that there's no confusion, we're not saying that at all. As noted by the slide, there are often quite a few things we actually prefer to buy locally. Again, beekeeping equipment that you can touch, feel, taste. No, you don't taste it, but you know what I mean. We would hope that you do take the effort to buy locally when it meets your requirements. Again, you should be really fortunate that you have a local place to go visit, and if you patronize them, they could stay in business. So do what we do, where and when it makes sense, and that includes making local purchases and supporting your local vendors. Make it part of your plan. Go out of your way to support them. If you're a little dodgy about one, where is a local store, and two, whether they're any good, should you go to them or should you just avoid the situation altogether, you can go ask your local club, ask your local association people if they have any recommendations. Somewhere in your association, somebody knows all the ins and outs about who's there and what they do. They can give you well-screened and vetted information about what's around and which ones to patronize. Patronize? Whatever the word is. Now, the quality of what is in and around the marketplace is generally good. That being said, there's one place you should be especially picky when you're buying your stuff, and that's with woodenware. In the end, poorly constructed hive boxes bring headaches throughout their use and will plague you for your entire time. It really pays off, as we've shared already, to buy better quality goods, especially when it relates to woodenware. Let's explore that just a little bit further. To make a good piece of equipment takes know-how. If you're the manufacturer, you have to have access to quality lumber. You make the investments in the right equipment to manufacture, and you can put out high quality goods in a repeatable manner. You don't put out seconds, no oopsies. Everything you put out goes out with a really good high quality control and standard. Now, we have seen very high quality stuff come out of local shops, but we've also seen, unfortunately, our share of some really terrible equipment. Locally made, homegrown stuff that would not pass muster. If you find that you're uncertain about what the difference is between good and bad, conservatively, you can just go the more predictable path and buy from the large suppliers. They have an incredible track record for producing goods and services. They've been around for a long, long time. And they're under the scrutiny of servicing large communities of beekeepers who are extremely demanding. If they don't do it right, they won't be in business. So when you see some of the bigger names, you know that they're doing the job. Now, here we've listed some of the larger providers that we're familiar with. Now, if you've heard of some other company that's not listed here, know that that's entirely possible. We're New Jersey based, and this is our sense, off our cuff, of ones that we've done business with and that do a lot of business in our region. And it's even highly possible that we've missed a couple. You're encouraged to go with what you know if you have other ideas. Do not let this list suggest that you have to go with it and steer you away from other choices. It's only provided here as an acknowledgement of some established companies that we're aware of, we've ordered stuff from, and we've had good results. We wouldn't hesitate to recommend buying woodenware from some of the large-scale vendors listed on the slide, and there's a lot of other ones out there that do a really good job. So like we said a bit ago, if you're unsure, consider asking for suggestions from your local beekeepers meeting. So far, we've not talked about buying things from shopping sites. Here, to be clear, we're talking about sites like eBay, Etsy, even Amazon.com. We're going to throw in new suppliers that have gotten into the business. You can order beekeeping kits sometimes from Walmart, from Tractor Supply. But more here, we're looking at eBay, Etsy, and some of the personal sellers that are selling through Amazon.com. Now, given you are new, it's hard to say if you will have success in buying offerings from these outlets who are not the big players, and the stuff that they offer varies widely. There is nothing more disheartening than to open a package to find out that it's substandard and you couldn't tell it from the picture on the website. And then you end up dealing with the drudgery or loss of the aftermath of it's not going to pass muster. We can tell you, relaying past experience, we've seen equipment that people have ordered from these outlets. Some of it's just downright embarrassing. It's been purchased by new beekeepers, and almost universally, if it's an amazing price, it has serious problems. You know the old adage, if the price is too good, then it probably is a bad deal, or whatever the saying is. Now, one quick exception is the flow hive. We know that beekeepers show up every year. Somebody's bought them a flow hive, or they've seen the advertisement and decided to buy one. Traditionally, their engineering has been amazing. Now, one thing to be said, don't buy a knockoff of a flow hive. Buy the genuine article. You're going to pay a lot of money, but you get what you pay for. They do a really good job. Now, we're not telling you to go buy a flow hive. In fact, we prefer you probably don't, but if you have one, we're going to help you with that because it's a Langstroth hive at its core. As we've said before, and we will say through the course, the actual flow frames and the flow part will tell you to go back to them for support in the community, and we can give some guidance because we've used them also. Net, our recommendation is you stay with the dedicated beekeeping supply houses. This is where we do have an opinion, and stay away from Etsy, stay away from eBay, and buy your stuff from bigger guys or local where you can look at the equipment. Especially if you're new to this, the bargains are not a bargain. Pre-built kits are offered by a lot of the vendors. One downside, if you know me, is they come with plastic foundation, and if you find something that's in the kit that you want to swap out, they're generally already pre-configured for sale, and vendors are not admirable when it comes to asking them to break them apart to make substitutions. It's not in their best interest. Really, the bigger drawback about them is when they configure the kits, a lot of times they throw in things that you wouldn't buy, don't need, or maybe they're not the right piece of equipment that you would have selected. Case in point, they could throw in a really cheap smoker, and you should buy a better smoker. Here's why. Every single time you go out and work with the bees, you work with a smoker. If they throw in a cheap one where the lid doesn't fit well, but it came as part of the kit, you will curse yourself every single time you're working with the bees. So consider whether or not you should or should go with a kit. One thing we will say to you is there's a certain, satisfaction from speccing all the parts out and ordering them. And a lot of times you can save some money because you're not buying things that you don't want to buy. But if you have it in your mind that it's easier just to buy something that somebody's already pre-configured for you, and again, they usually do a reasonable job at that, then that's your personal preference. We're just about done with this. It's a good time to remind you, when you're making purchases, you're to buy 2 setups. We want you to have 2, and if you've listened to the introductory lesson, you know the reason behind that. This is a good time for just a quick reminder about that. Now, what we're going to talk about before we leave the lesson is construction in woodenware. It's an important fact for your buying consideration. I want you to look at the pictures on the slide and realize that there's 2 primary formats for how to put hives together. Joinery. These are boards that are engineered to interlock and fit with each other, versus what is commonly referred to in the industry as a butt joint, where 2 boards are held together and just manually fastened with a nail or a screw. If you want to look at it from a perspective of strength, joinery, which is the traditional way that Hive equipment is manufactured, is far superior. This is a little different twist on marketplace offerings in that you will find Hive equipment that sometimes is sold and it does not use joinery. It comes with butt joints, boards butted up against each other and screwed together. We're recommending you do not go this path. A lot of times that's done for the manufacturer because it's cheaper to build it that way, faster, inexpensive, and in their sense, good enough is perfect. I want you to keep in mind that for over 100 years, beekeeping boxes have been built with joinery, and maybe it's over-engineered, but the fact is it has a purpose. The forces for supporting the weight, which gets monumental when some hives get really tall, require that the boxes can hold up with whatever is placed over top of them. When you have good joinery, it keeps the boxes square. This is imperative because when one box is out of square from the other, you run into problems with bee space. One of the key things, having used boxes that have butt joints, they get really heavy when they're loaded with frames of resources and bees, and if you drop one of them, it breaks open on the corner and splays bees out all over the ground. A box with joinery is not prone to break, no matter how much you drop them. If you drop them on concrete or whatever, they generally hold the case. It'll ding the corner, but they're not going to break open as a general rule. So you are far better supported if you go with traditional finger joints in your hive equipment. Don't buy butt joint quality equipment. One last piece of wisdom to impart about buying equipment. We've said so far in some of the lessons that you've encountered that the dimensions for the equipment are standardized, and this is generally true. We also pointed out that the interior of the hive, sometimes the manufacturing tolerances are manufacturer discretion. That being said, the way a frame hangs inside of a standardized box changes, and this is the time while you're shopping to figure out who you like to do business with and settle on them. The point here is once you buy your equipment, always go back to that manufacturer and buy your frames. And you want to know who you're buying from and whether you like them or not, whether you like the shopping experience, whether you like generally what they have. Because later when you go to buy more equipment, you should always go back to that same vendor. There's no reason to switch to somebody else and run into headaches and problems, especially when it comes for woodenware. We can't stress enough to buy your woodenware, make your choice, and make sure that that company's going to be around, like the big guys are, for a long, long time. Some of those big guy companies have been around for 100 plus years. Just keep that in mind as you're making your purchase decisions. That was a lot to consider. We hope you feel a little more informed about navigating the marketplace. Know that if you're part of a local association, again, just reminding you, seek some guidance there about equipment purchases, especially if you're buying locally. And take your time, get familiar with what you're going to buy, and then dive right in. Truthfully, sourcing your equipment is like a rite of passage. For most, it's an enjoyable experience because you get to shop and have fun looking at different things and learning. You can learn a lot by reading bee catalogs. And you get more connected with what you did when you start to fabricate your equipment and put it in service. This closes our desire to be helpful. Hopefully we were. And next up, we're going to review some additional items that you're going to need for rounding out your kit. From there, we jump into what protective gear we would recommend you buy, and how to build frames, how to do hive fabrication, and so on. If you have questions about this presentation, you could leave a comment below. If you're watching from our website, when you hover over the video, a YouTube link pops up. Click on the YouTube link. It'll take you to YouTube, and then you could leave a comment there, and make sure you subscribe to our channel. You could also send a message to the email address. We'll do our best to get back to you. And as you know, you can ask your questions at the next online session when we come to talk about this particular presentation. That brings us to the end of this presentation, and just have to say finally, thanks for watching.